at these articles, I started to create a story, right? There was a story that started to spin, which was a lot of what ifs. Stories kind of come out as like what ifs. And sometimes if you're not careful, stories also, they don't just occur as hypotheticals or what ifs. They also can occur as like the truth. The story can occur as this is what's actually happening. And I had to take a minute, I had to pause, and I had to start to look for what actually is happening, and then what am I making it mean? What is actually happening, and what am I making it mean? Because those two things are very different. And there's a lot of people right now making what's happening mean a lot of things. In 2003, I went to a course called the Landmark Forum. And in the Landmark Forum, we actually learned how to uncollapse these things like what happened in life and what we made it mean, right? So as a kid, my dad was an alcoholic, and he had a very short temper, and he was explosive. 1 minute he's fine, the next minute he's yelling. And I just always felt like, I was like, well, my dad doesn't love me, right? So there was what happened. My dad yelled, right? Many times. But what happened was my dad yelled. What I made it mean was my dad doesn't love me. So you can see already, like, there's what happens, and then there's what I make it mean. My dad yelled at me. I made it mean my dad doesn't love me. And you can see these patterns in your life all over. There's what happened, right? Your spouse leaves you, somebody dies, you lost a job, you got fired, you were broke, you went bankrupt. There are things that happen, and then there's what you make it mean. And inside of that, you've got to be able to separate those two things. Because when you live inside the story, if you can't step out of the story, then the story starts to run your life, right? You start to, let's look at, there are a lot of ways then in the story called My Dad Doesn't Love Me that you go out, I went outside of that to be like, well, I don't need my dad's love. And my life became a reaction to the story. Well, I don't need my dad's love. I'll do something else. And we start living in a reaction to the story. Okay, now, just pause for a minute. Look at what's happening right now. There's a lot of story going on, and people are living in a reaction to the story in the coronavirus. Okay, I got it. Cool. Let's quarantine. Let's social distance. Let's do whatever to not spread stuff. But there's what happens, and there's what you make it mean. So you got to be diligent right now about watching the story you're telling. Because it's very easy for the story to sneak in, and pretty soon you don't realize it's the story. You think it's what's happening. You think it's what's true, but in fact, it's just a story.